Well, hello there. It is great to see you again, and welcome back to Optimizing Your Financial World. I'm your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff, and as always, we've got our star of the show in Mr. Mark Wade, president of Echelon Family Office. He's standing by. He'll be jumping aboard with me in just a moment. But look, hey, we want to welcome you back to season 3 of the show. Boy, is it exciting to be turning the page into a new season. For any of you guys out there that are just joining us for the first time here today, and with the start of season 3, to bring you up to speed, each time Mark and I get together, we're tapping into really over 4 decades worth of experience in the financial services sector. And we're talking about the different strategies, the solutions, and even just the conversations that Mark is having with his clients over at Echelon Family Office on a regular basis. We've taken a dive into so many different wealth management topics throughout the course of our show so far, and boy, do we have a good one to kickstart season 3 today. And we're taking a little bit of a non so traditional approach here as we move into season 3. Today, we're talking about goals. And let's face it, there's no shortage of goals out there in our lives, that we set for ourselves, for our loved ones, maybe even our communities. But defining meaningful goals and then pursuing them intelligently, I mean, hey, we're all guilty of it. We don't always do it the best way we should. So today, Mark and I are going to be examining, a few different ways to develop a clear vision for our goals, translate that vision into some actionable steps that you can take forward, and then so that way you can really go after these goals, maybe with some gusto or some pep in your step. So really great conversation here today about goal setting. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Mark on and get right into it. Mark, good to see you this morning. How you doing?
Hey, Ryan, how are you today? It's great to be back here for season 3. I'm looking forward to a lot of the great topics we've got in store.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I always look forward to being with you, man. And today we're talking about goal setting, which we've touched on in past episodes throughout the past few seasons. But today we're going to be diving a little more, deep into this idea of goal setting. Why is it, Mark? Why are we even talking about goals and goal setting today?
Yeah, great question, right? So, yeah, and it is very much important too, because if you think about it, as wealth managers, we at the Echelon Family Office, uh, you know, sometimes some of the most important discussions we have with clients are about goals and setting those goals with clients and also prospective clients. And I'm talking about the full range of goals, things that will have an effect on their professional life, their personal life, their social areas, financial, of course, charitable, and so on. Getting clear on which goals are really important and meaningful, it can really seem like a daunting task at times. And planning for those goals, it's really essential. You got to have a track to run on. So you got to have clear vision and an idea of how you're going to get to achieving those goals.
Roger, yeah, you say being clear, gaining that clarity. Mark, do you find that many people need help maybe coming up with the goals and then better defining them before they even start down that road?
It's kind of funny because most of us rarely, if ever, run out of goals that we want to pursue, right? We all have the next thing that we really want to accomplish. So, there's so much that we want to accomplish, whether it's personal or professional. And in most cases, it's probably both, that we don't often consider two very important goal related questions. And they seem simple, but they're really easy to overlook. And, the first is, how good are you really at consistently achieving truly meaningful goals that you set out for yourself? So that's number one, question number one. Number two is, and then how often do those goals that you think are important get sidelined? How often do they get pushed off or eliminated entirely from your list? I've seen it happen all the time. So even if you pursue your goals with a dogged determination, I'm going to bet that efforts at reaching those objectives could probably use a little help, a little work. And clarification is really important in that area. So I think that's the case with most people. They have trouble with those two questions.
Roger that. So it sounds to me, really just the setting process, goal setting is really where you start. Mark, talk to us a little bit about goal setting and really just that first step forward here.
Goal setting, absolutely. Yeah. You know, you want to get really clear. You want to be able to have a crystal clear image of what it is you're trying to do, right? Um, and and to do it, it is often most helpful to enlist the right people to get you to help get you get that clarification that you need. Okay. And to identify what you should, and just as importantly, what you shouldn't be doing to get to that finish line. So, it takes a series of different type of mindsets and thought processes, followed by the appropriate action steps, that are aimed really at helping you to improve your focus and to be able to zero in on those outcomes that you're trying to achieve the most, and the things that you care about most in life, and also the things that you really need to do. You need a process to pursue them intelligently, and more often than not, if you do that, you'll be able to reach them.
No, of course, Mark. So talk us through it. What is step number one, in getting into this idea of goal setting?
Hey Ryan, first step, yeah, I think it's clearly you have to come up with that crystal clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Really, what do you want your life to look like? It sounds obvious, but the idea of starting with the end in mind, it's long been emphasized by some of the best writers and goal setting people out there, like let's say Stephen Covey. But there are a lot of great experts and authors and programs out there that are helpful in helping people to define, set, and achieve their goals. Having said all of that, we still see far too many people skip that first step, right? The clear vision. And more commonly, they don't go deep enough into what that clear vision really looks like. A compelling vision that feels real and meaningful, that really comes only with some thought and some work. So, as a result, you know, people often end up implementing strategies without a strong vision to support them, and that, of course, oftentimes leads to a lot of drifting and wasting time, going back and forth, and not being productive on what it is that they're trying to accomplish in the long term. So, the key here really is to have that robust, crystal clear vision in mind. Um, I would say all too often people stop at a vision statement, and everybody hears it. What's your vision statement? And that could be one of those short, pithy sentences or two, that could you could put on a coffee mug or a t-shirt, right? Instead of that, you want something that's going to be really strong enough to actually act as a filter for your daily decision making. Instead of a vision, think script. Think this is a document. Maybe it's 2, 3, or 5 pages long, and it presents a really clear, crystal clear picture of where you want to be at some point in the future, whether it be 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. So you really need that. You really need that document to help guide you in the long term.
I like what you mentioned, Mark, that reverse engineering to be able to define what that crystal clear vision is. I mean, as so many of us can relate to that term, reverse engineering. So, okay, you've defined that crystal clear vision. What's the next step, as we move into goal setting?
Yeah. The next step really is taking that big vision and breaking it down into smaller steps. Again, all these great programs out there are excellent at helping you do that. So we're just touching on the surface today, but you got to take that big vision and distill it down into actionable, smaller steps. You can do the well-known what they call SWOT analysis, right? What are your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And that may help you reveal that there's one overarching problem or maybe threat that is going on, and maybe unless you resolve it, it's going to prevent you from realizing your vision. In other words, nothing else is going to matter if that one issue isn't addressed successfully. So, once you have broken down the big vision into smaller steps and you've gained some insights, armed with those insights, you can identify what most people address, uh, or should address, in order to make meaningful progress toward the realization of what that vision might be, and do that over the next 2, 3, 5 years, whatever your time target is. So, you have to address what must be addressed, and it may look like a to-do list that's a mile long. So you got to hone that list down into very specific goals and break them down into smaller steps. Those programs out there are excellent at that.
Sure. And Mark, I like that we're getting here because I think this is where so many of us get lost along the way, right? And we're not able to achieve our goals. It's that idea of having this big list of dreams and aspirations and the things that we know that need to get done in order for us to achieve those goals. But do you have any advice for us on this front on how they can make this process happen and really hone in on maybe a few key action items and steps they need to take?
Hey, yeah, Ryan, absolutely. One approach is to go after the goals that have a tremendous large upside and very little downside. At the echelon companies, echelon wealth strategies and echelon asset protection, and then echelon, family office, we focus on that all the time. We're trying to mitigate the risk, minimize the risk as much as possible. So big upside with very small downside if it doesn't work out right. And to a lot of people that can sound like sound advice, but oftentimes people do the exact opposite thing. They concentrate on the things that have very little up to no upside, and they're not paying attention to the fact that there could be tremendous downside if it doesn't work or they make a mistake. So, it's important to make sure big positives, small negatives, right? And don't overlook a goal just because it may seem small. you know, if your goal is focused in the right area, it can have a big impact, even if it's just a small goal that you're trying to achieve. So, be judicious about those goals that you are working on. Look, oftentimes in business, it means, you don't necessarily have to make sweeping changes to your products or your services. These small goals uh, could be extremely effective. You don't have to aggressively pursue new markets or redesign your entire organizational structure. Sometimes just doubling down on existing sales and marketing, accompanied by a small price hike can get you to your vision in a short period of time. So also keep in mind and consider, relationships and what that might mean. Uh, for example, it might mean that you don't need to give expensive, dazzling gifts to your clients or your prospects. Think about it. Sometimes it's the small things you do for your spouse that make a big difference, right? It may be as small as, picking 3 tasks or errands that your spouse doesn't particularly enjoy doing and say, you know what, I'm going to do one of these each week for the next 3 months. It's the same way in your business. Sometimes it's the little things you do for clients that have a tremendous impact.
Oh, I love that. I think that makes this whole concept of goal setting not as daunting. It's focus on the small things sometimes and recognize the value in some of the small items. I love this, Mark. But while we're talking about that list, that long list, and where there's all these items on the board that you want to get achieved, is there a magic number in your mind of goals that somebody should seek out? And let's say, like in the coming 6 to 12 months, let's make that our range. Would you say there's a magic number for the amount of goals somebody should have within that time frame, maybe of 6 to 12 months?
Human nature being what it is and different people having different types of discipline and focus, I would say that a dozen, 12 is probably the most that you should think about in any one year, 3 per quarter. More than that, and you risk taking on too much maybe, and you tip the scale towards failure rather than success. As your focus, you lose the focus. It becomes fractured and you're all over the place. You don't want that to happen. Um, but your goals should also be specific, right? And they need to be measurable and they need to have a time limit for completion. And any of these goal programs are going to tell you that. Goals need to be also, if you think about this, it's kind of counterintuitive, but they also need to be somewhat risky. Okay. They need to push you into the discomfort zone a little bit, to prompt you to be maybe a little bit more innovative in your thinking and cause you to stretch a little bit to achieve these bigger goals. So, goals need to be realistic, sure. But if you make them too realistic, think about it. The bar may be too low, and achieving them is not going to be, maybe have a really deeply meaningful result. We like to say we want to drive true and meaningful value to the bottom line for you and your family. And unless you're stretching a little bit, you may not get there.
Yeah, really important to consider. And Mark, on so many other topics here on this show, we always, we focus on what to do, but sometimes it's also equally as important to focus on what not to do. So, before we cap off our conversation here today about goal settings, are there any mistakes that you're seeing that people should be on the lookout for as they're developing their goals and then going after them?
Yeah. There was a great book out a number of years ago called The Paradox of Success. How people can be truly successful in certain areas of their life and totally fail in other areas. So here's what I'm going to say. I'd be real careful you're not trying to achieve tremendous success in your business or your career, okay? at the expense of your quality of life. And that's your life and your family's life. Don't compromise your health. It's number one. You must maintain good health or you can't help anybody. Your ability to help people drops dramatically. So don't compromise your health. Well, and along those lines are those most important relationships. Okay, you you got to strike a better balance between you know life and business, a better balance and build a better life of significance across the board rather than fall victim to that hustle fallacy where you got to work, 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 and not pay attention to the people in your life that are really important. So don't sacrifice everything else in your own personal life just for the sake of achieving your ambition. Another mistake that I see a lot relates back to the concept of even having the vision, having a vision. Don't allow yourself to water your vision down because you can't see a way to achieve it right now. So, for example, you might start developing a bold vision, but it's one where there's no clear path there right now. You can't see how to get from here to there. Don't get nervous and dial that vision back to a point where you can see specific strategies that you can use to get you there. A better approach is going to be stick with the vision that causes you that little discomfort and uncertainty. That type of vision is the one that's going to challenge you and challenge your thinking and motivate you and the people around you to do some great things. So, think big, accomplish big.
Oh, Mark, this is fantastic. I really love this conversation to open up season 3. I mean, goal setting, boy, can it be so important. It gets so overlooked by so many of us out there. A lot of great nuggets of information here today. And Mark, for anybody out there in the audience, and maybe they're sitting there and this conversation's really resonating with them, and they're interested in maybe reaching out to you and chatting to you and your team about this idea of goal setting and maybe some goals that they could make for their own lives or their own business, what would be the best way they could get in touch with you and your team to just open up that dialogue and start the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. And well said, by the way. This is a team effort. You need a team to make all of this happen. Not from the vision to crystallize what those individual elements and steps are, right down to the execution. You need a team to make it happen. So, feel free to visit us on the web at www.echelonoffice.com. That's ECHELON office.com. You can contact me directly at mwade, that's MWADE, at echelonwealth.com. That's ECHELON, the word wealth.com, or call in 888-892-9882.
Fantastic, Mark. Well, look, I appreciate you carving some time out of your day to jump aboard and be with us, talk through this idea of goal setting. Really a good conversation today. And I'm looking forward to jumping back on the next one with you.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Goal setting. Bring it up on your list. It's important.
Amen to that. Well, look, hey, we want to take one final moment, as always, and thank you guys, our audience, for being a part of the show and stopping by and spending some time with us today. If you took anything away from today's conversation and you benefited from it in any way, shape, or form, go ahead and subscribe to the show on whichever platform that you checked us out on today. And then, of course, share this information with any friends, family, business owners, anybody that you think these conversations would apply to. I said at the beginning of the show, I'll say it again, we're really just tapping into those conversations that Mark is having with his clients on a regular basis over at Echelon Family Office, and we're bringing them right here to you guys on this show. So when you subscribe to the show, that way you can never miss out on a future episode, especially if it's a topic that we cover that day that's extremely pertinent to you and yours. So for Mark, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long, but we appreciate you guys stopping by and being with us on Optimizing Your Financial World.